Hello, scholars. Dr. McGill here, and I just wanted to take a little time to clarify and perhaps provide a bit of understanding as it relates to the learner and differentiating the learner's needs and your audience's need and the special considerations that would follow that process. I am well aware that those terms could seem synonymous when trying to delineate and differentiate what do I write here or how do I articulate this. I get it. I truly get it, and that is why I wanted to take a few minutes and explain what is required and perhaps give you some tools for your toolkit to articulate the needs of your learner audience with more clarity and more command. So in articulating and reading, let's recap on what the rubric states for the learner. It states, logically and clearly identifies and delineates the learner and considers differences among individual learners in order to help them achieve desired learning outcomes. So first, let me reason with you. I understand that trying to glean all of the differences that learners may contain in one learning audience can be extremely overwhelming, can be very daunting, and quite taxing on the instructor. But understand, future nurse educators, it is extremely essential that you are able to identify what makes your learner learn. Students have different levels of motivation, different attitudes towards the content, different attitudes towards the instructor, towards you, different responses to specific stimuli and instructional practices, and all of these differences create the likelihood that the student is going to retain the content. All of these differences create that likelihood. And I can give you a personal example really quick with my own son. My son, when he goes into the classroom, he is more of a relational theory type of learner. He really wants to build a connection with the person that is instructing him. And because of that, if he has a teacher who may be more dogmatic and not really charismatic in talking about the content and building that rapport with the audience, he will perform poor in that class than in other classes where the content may be more rigorous, but because of his relationship with the instructor, and because he respects the instructor and believes the instructor is the expert regarding the content, he is more in tune with the material. These differences matter. It makes a difference for a play on words. You have to understand the educational terms of differentiated instruction and align that differentiated instruction to response intervention, the RTI. And that is what you're doing here. You're looking at how your individuals, how they take information and acquire it, and how they process it and apply it. And all of that relates back to their different characteristics that they present to you on a day-to-day basis. So not only are you identifying the differences, but you're delineating them, you're describing them, you're giving life to the words that you're saying, you're individualizing them. That's what you're doing. So instead of saying I have generation X, you might go into more detail to say I have generation X. However, these generation X are very technologically savvy. You're describing it, you're delineating it. You consider these differences and how that might impact the outcomes that you have established for your content. What you expect the learner to get out of this entire encounter. So the schematic to the right here is just simply possibilities of learner differences that you may encounter. Age, communication differences, critical period hypothesis, what they think about the content and how critical it is to actually learn this information, learner preferences, the learner's aptitude, the learning styles, their overall demeanor. Are they an introvert, extrovert? Are they, holistic or synoptic? What type of person is he or she, or them or they? What type of person are they? So that you're able to move in a rhythm where the learner is placed in a position to be successful. So that is the differences. Now we go to the special considerations. Special considerations, the rubric asks that you logically and clearly identify and explain special considerations that will need to be made for the proposed learner or learner audience. So do you see how these two must coincide? You have to identify the differences in order to understand what considerations must be employed. Special considerations could be identified as the actual interventions you might have to do in order to accommodate for the differences you have identified with the learner. And I gave an example here with the schematic to the right that discuss special considerations in athletics. And notice how they talk about environmental considerations and what you may have to do with the environment. For example, my boys play football. The heat in Mississippi is triple digits. And so a heat advisory is a special consideration. As such, I must go and make sure that they have enough water, they are getting enough rest, that they eat, and they have opportunities to take breaks and cool off. Otherwise, we may have a heat stroke, or heat exhaustion. That's a special consideration. So as you look at the learner audience, you're analyzing this audience to identify specifics that you need to understand. And then those specifics, you have to create these considerations to accommodate for them. I mean, what good is it to know there's a problem and have no type of solution in the works to rectify that problem? It doesn't work. The nursing process teaches us that we must assess, diagnose, develop a goal, have interventions, evaluate, start over. So this is what we do, like clockwork. So I did an example here. And I just did learner audience of NUR 635. In my audience that I am identifying, which is not specific to any class, just a general survey of all of my classes. I've had generational differences. I've had ethnical differences. I have geographical differences. I have practice experience differences. And I will tell you, going back to the geographical differences, I had one student that was in California. And there are times when I will do synchronous sessions and just everybody, let's get together. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page. And I had to consider special consideration that particular learner, because that learner was at the time 4 hours behind my East Coast learners. Those are the types of considerations we're speaking of. Practice experience differences, novice to expert here, some that may even be emerging into a new role. MSN concentration in this particular course, not every student is a nurse educator focus. Some are nurse generalists because they take this course as an elective. I have communication style differences. Some are very reserved and don't want to ask the question. Others are very assertive and will ask the questions for everyone. Some are timid. Some have paired with other faculty and may ask that faculty the question and come to me, in an alternate form. Everybody communicates differently. And then I have writing style differences. Some are very ordinate and they are just this long, flowy, very detailed and thorough and just extremely beautiful to read narrative, like reading a novel. Some are straightforward, to the point. Others are abbreviated. The point almost made it, but not really. And then some are expository, where they really explain everything that they're doing. So you may say, well, what's the difference between ordinate and expository? Well, ordinate has a lot of complex sentence structure and prepositional phrase introductions and just a lot of fluency, while expository does deep diving to explain the actual content that is being stated. So I decided to take the writing style and create special considerations for that. So I told you that the learner analysis was writing style differences, and I gave you the differences that are there. My special considerations for these differences would be to explain the anticipated genre. So I try very hard to make sure that you understand what is needed in the submission. I do so by putting it in the general feedback section when I give you your grade. And you may say, well, I want to know it before my grade, but the purpose is for you to learn it. How do we learn? How do we retain as adult learners? We learn by mistakes, and we learn by looking at the rationale after we have been through a thing, experiential learning, so to speak. And so I make sure that you put out there what you know. And then if there's something I need to do to correct it, that corrective action will occur. Provide specific detail of what is required. I make sure to explain that informative writing is expected first. So no matter what your unique style of writing may be, you do have to indeed answer the question, or you will get a needs improvement. And most of all, probably the most important thing that I do is I grade with grace, because everyone is different, and it takes me a few of your submissions to kind of glean where you are. But once I identify your individual learning difference in regards to writing styles, I will grade with grace. I may know that student X is very abbreviated and might not have 20 pages, while student Z is an ordinate writer, and so I can anticipate a 36-page paper because that's what they're going to do. I grade with grace because that doesn't make student Z better than student X. It makes them different, yet not deficient. So when I am trying to put information out there, you may see me put the information out in audio form. I may put it out in written form. I may show you a schematic or create a picture. However I need to do once I identify just the style of my audience in this course. So I really hope that this information has been beneficial to you and you can understand the mechanics of the thing, that they are not the same, yet they are essential to each other. You have to identify the learning differences within your audience in order to develop the special considerations for your audience. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. And until the next time, take care.